Hi, welcome to my Practice Transforming Masterclass, how to stop your clients from relapsing without leaving you burnt out, exhausted, and frustrated. My name is Christina Veselak, and I am a licensed psychotherapist and certified nutritionist, and I have been working in the field of addiction as a relapse prevention specialist for over 30 years. I am also founder and director of the online school, the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition, whose mission is to train practitioners just like you on how to address the third leg of the recovery stool, the biochemical, using natural means, and especially diet and nutrients. The purpose of today's masterclass is to share with you the 4 big discoveries that transformed my practice and my work with my clients and in treatment programs. These are discoveries and skills that I wish I'd known about and had in my toolbox 30 years ago, when my clients were relapsing all over the place, some of them dying, leaving their families traumatized and themselves without hope. My first discovery is the big thing that traditional addiction treatment misses. And as I share that with you, I'm going to teach you why amino acid and nutrient therapy alongside your core skill set is a must for better client outcome. Discovery number 2, building on this, is how to stop most client cravings within 20 minutes and then stop chronic relapsing most of the time. Discovery number 3, how to empower your dependent or addicted client to safely detox at home without the need for hospitalization or more medication. And discovery number 4 is how to keep your clients engaged in recovery and sometimes treatment long-term by empowering them to reduce their anxiety, their stress, their depression, their lack of focus, their lack of motivation, post-acute withdrawal, and despair for good. But in 45 minutes, I truly can only skim the surface of what I want to offer you. So at the end of this masterclass, I will offer you a range of free and affordable ways for you to benefit from all the discoveries I have made in my 30+ years in the field, and a way for you to become expert in this approach, feeling competent and confident in helping your clients apply these life-changing and sometimes life-saving strategies that have transformed my practice. I'm actually going to offer you a full money-back guarantee because I believe in this approach so strongly from my many years applying it, and much, much more. To give you the best possible value from today's masterclass, I like my trainings to be interactive. So as we go through today's training, I'm going to share symptoms that you will recognize in some of your past and current clients, along with client stories. And if any of these symptoms or stories resonate with you, you see yourself or your family member or clients, past and present, in any of these stories, I ask that you write them down, and we'll get back to them at the end. So, to get started, discovery number 1, the missing link in stopping cravings and relapse to achieve long-term and fulfilling recovery. What we've discovered is that the third leg of the recovery stool is optimal nutrition. And my promise is that utilizing this missing link will support both your client's recovery and your career opportunities as it has mine. So what we're going to be looking at is how a well-fed, balanced brain is the key to successful treatment and recovery, how amino acid therapy decreases cravings and withdrawal symptoms by supporting neurotransmitter restoration, how missing a meal sets us up for relapse, and how to support client success using personalized nutritional strategies without you needing to become a nutritional wizard. So what is addiction? Well, we are all taught that it's a biopsychosocial spiritual disorder. But when I was in school, and since I've been in school, the biochemical part of the addictive process tends to be ignored in treatment programs and in the 12-step program as well, in spite of Bill W. trying to address it when he started AA. Traditional treatment does a great job addressing the psychosocial and spiritual aspects of both process addictions and substance use disorders, but they ignore the brain other than introducing more medication to the mix. I want to change that because we have discovered that feeding the brain addresses this biochemical leg of the stool most of the time. So addiction is actually driven by the brain. The brain is our master control panel. It mediates our mood, our sleep, our ability to relax, our ability to be energized and motivated. But it also mediates our ability to utilize our skills, utilize and access willpower, change our behaviors, identify and change our negative cognitions, and give us either accurate perceptions of what's happening around and inside of us, or inaccurate perceptions, which can get us into trouble. And most importantly of all, in this context, it mediates our cravings. So an imbalanced life requires an imbalanced brain. So what throws the brain off balance? Unstable blood sugar, depleted neurotransmitters, which are our mood-mediating chemicals, and nutrient deficiencies or malnutrition. We'll be looking at these other things later on in my courses, but not right now. So most importantly of all, a hungry brain throws our brain off balance, and therefore our behavior and our ability to access our recovery skills. It's our brain's job to allow us to cope with stress gracefully, but to do that, it must be fed optimally. Isn't that lovely? That our brain is what allows us to cope with stress gracefully? Many of us want more of that grace, don't we? Well, to get that, we need to feed our brain what it needs in order to function the way it was designed to. So what is that? Well, food is actually not optional. In today's society, with food everywhere and not food everywhere, we tend to take it for granted. And many of us were not taught why we're actually supposed to eat, what food is supposed to do for us. And so we think that just feeding our belly is sufficient. Well, it's not. The brain actually requires certain nutrients to function. Adequate protein to provide amino acid precursors of the neurotransmitters, specific vitamins and minerals from the fruits and veggies we eat to act as enzymes and cofactors, the right essential fatty acids, which include actually enough cholesterol, healthy fats, the omega-3 fatty acids, certain other oils, not too many of them, and phospholipids, because having the right fats in our brain allow for these neurotransmitters to be transmitted most efficiently and effectively. And then, of course, water. Have you ever gotten yourself really dehydrated and found yourself slow and sluggish with brain fog and depression? And as soon as you drank a glass or two of water, everything perked up? Well, our brain has an awful lot of water in it, and it too is required for proper neurotransmission. So what are neurotransmitters? They are our mood mediators. All of our feelings, behaviors, and ability to respond to stress are mediated by these chemical families. If they are in balance and functioning properly, so probably are we. But depleted neurotransmitters lead to symptoms including cravings, depression, apathy, anxiety, and insomnia. Sometimes these neurotransmitters start out depleted due to genetic issues, which can be passed down through addicted families. And sometimes they are depleted, as we looked at before, through malnutrition, stress, illness, and other things. But depleted neurotransmitters are what keep the addiction engine running. So neurotransmitters are made out of amino acids in the presence of vitamins and minerals. The sources of these amino acids are high protein foods. So this includes, of course, meat, fish, eggs, milk and milk products, beans, nuts, and seeds. But we can also inexpensively buy them over the counter as carefully grown free-form amino acids. And this is what I want to teach you how to use. So what are amino acids? Well, they are molecules which form the building block of the human body. They are found in food and clumped together to form protein, so that when we eat this protein, and if we optimally digest it, it turns back into its constituent amino acids, which we then absorb into our bloodstream. They go everywhere in the body doing a variety of things, like making our enzymes, our blood, our muscle, our skin. But some of them go through the blood-brain barrier and are used by the brain in the presence of vitamins and minerals to make our neurotransmitters. And research shows, as well as clinical experience, that these ingested amino acids cross the blood-brain barrier and create new neurotransmitters along with improved mood and behavior in as little as 1 to 20 minutes, depending upon delivery method. Isn't that amazing? These are the fastest antidepressants and anti-anxiety substances in the world. And they are anti-addictive, because whereas we use mood-altering substances to change mood, they actually work by depleting our neurotransmitters. And tolerance builds on the basis of the brain downregulating and making even fewer neurotransmitters. Amino acids, on the other hand, work by rebuilding our neurotransmitter stores. And so that over time, rather than needing more and more to get the same effect, we get to take less and less to get the same effect. This is why I love working with amino acids. So there are 4 mood-regulating neurotransmitter systems. The catecholamines, which include dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine, otherwise known as adrenaline, give us energy, drive, enthusiasm, and reward. They are the spark in life. And they are made out of the amino acids L-phenylalanine and L-tyrosine, along with the vitamin and mineral cofactors. When we have low catecholamines, we have an apathetic depression, slow and sluggish. Boredom may really get to us, and we may need lots of high-intensity sports or adventure. We may also have poor focus and chronic fatigue. So we are drawn towards stimulant medication and stimulant street drugs, along with coffee. Thrills, alcohol, sugar starches, and tobacco all fire our catecholamines, and so actually do opiate drugs once we have developed a dependency upon them. Do you know of any of your people with heroin issues who relapse due to fatigue? This helps. Serotonin mediates the ability to flow, the ability to be mellow, to have self-esteem, humor, flexibility, and because it turns into melatonin, sleep. Serotonin, the precursors to serotonin are L-tryptophan and 5-HTP, along with the cofactors. Now, when our serotonin is low, we may have obsessive worry that can keep us awake at night or wake us up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Insomnia due to this, as well as insomnia due to low melatonin, which tells our brain that it's time to sleep. Bulimia, OCD, perfectionism, irritability, PMS, and holding grudges. So I'd like you to think of how many of your clients, or maybe yourself or your family members, have obsessive worry that keeps you awake at night. And you're drawn to perhaps a glass of wine before bed, or an SSRI medication, or cannabis, or the before bed cigarette. Well, all of these substances deplete your neurotransmitters so that you need more and more to get the same effect over time, whereas amino acids work very quickly to rebuild and support your natural brain chemicals. GABA mediates muscle relaxation, the ability to have a deep, relaxed, restful sleep, and the ability to cope with stress. We find GABA by itself, or it's also supported by other substances such as taurine, inositol, theanine, which is one of my favorites, glutamine, and magnesium. Now, when our GABA is low, we're going to have physical tension, physical anxiety, which will lead to insomnia and restless sleep, a sense of overwhelm, sometimes even seizure disorders, anxiety and panic. And people with a highly sensitive personality type are also often deficient in GABA. So when our GABA is low, we are drawn to alcohol, cannabis, sugar and starches, tobacco, as well as the benzodiazepine medications such as Ativan or Valium. And then finally, the endorphins. The endorphins mediate emotional and physical pain control, the ability to bond both with our babies as well as the loved ones in our lives, comfort and loved. Now it's actually cleaved off a bigger molecule, so we don't have just a single amino acid precursor to it. We need to have the full range of aminos floating in our brain. And this is one reason why a high protein diet is so effective and essential. However, there is an amino acid, D-phenylalanine, which was created to allow the endorphins to stay in the synapse longer, providing longer pain control and comfort. Now, when our endorphins are low, we may have chronic physical pain, chronic emotional pain. We may be stuck in the grieving cycle or stuck in loneliness. And many people with low endorphins will crave opioids and opiates of all sorts, but also sugar and starch, alcohol, THC, and the ubiquitous tobacco. Well, sugar and alcohol are also pretty ubiquitous. And one of the reasons for this is that sugar, alcohol, THC, and tobacco fire all of our neurotransmitters, thus depleting them. So I have a number of references here, some old, some newer, and they will give you a good sense of all of the research that has been done on this over the last 50 odd years. So what is the other aspect of feeding our brain optimally? Well, this is keeping blood sugar absolutely stable. Because we have found that something called reactive hypoglycemia, which is actually a diagnosable medical disorder, it's rampant internationally, it's commonly underdiagnosed. It's a direct result of the standard American diet, which is high in unhealthy fats, sugar, and simple starches. This occurs in other places of the world as well. It causes many of the symptoms in our clients, and it's a major cause of impulsive violence, post-acute withdrawal, PMS, and cravings. In fact, it seems to be the primary relapse trigger for all addiction, substance use disorders, as well as process addictions. So what is it? Well, people who have disordered glucose metabolism, which is what we're calling reactive hypoglycemia, if they either go too long without food or have a high carbohydrate meal or challenge, going too long without food leads to low blood sugar, and having a high carbohydrate meal or challenge leads to a precipitous drop in blood sugar levels. And what this does is releases adrenaline, because adrenaline releases stored sugar, and it's the adrenaline that will lead to symptoms and cravings. Well, if blood sugar keeps dropping after the adrenaline wears off, that will lead to symptoms and cravings as well. So let's take a look at this. The top line, the red line, is diabetes. It starts high and goes even higher. The brown line in the middle is normal glucose metabolism. See, all of these people started by eating a certain amount of glucose syrup. But everybody in this study and in these studies respond very, very differently. We all would like to be in the middle with this brown line where we can manage sugar effectively. Our blood sugar rises a little bit, then it drops, and then it stabilizes. Perfect, until we eat again. However, it's the green line that is reactive hypoglycemia, and that is of most concern because blood sugar will rise immediately, very quickly, and quite high, leading then to a precipitous drop, and this is actually what is diagnostic of reactive hypoglycemia, that it goes so low. Well, the brain can't deal with blood sugar going so low, and so it sends out an emergency alert to the adrenals to release adrenaline, which will release, in turn, stored sugar back into the bloodstream. So you actually see here blood sugar increase, even though no more food was added. Well, unfortunately, adrenaline carries its own problems. So let's look at what some of those problems are. But before we do that, I want to show you some statistics from a favorite treatment program of mine in Loveland, Colorado, where every single person coming into the program is given a 4-hour glucose tolerance test to either rule in or out hyporeactive hypoglycemia. Well, I asked them to pull 20 random non-alcoholic clients, because we already know that about 80% of alcoholics have reactive hypoglycemia, but I wanted to see what the rate was with people with other substance use disorders. And lo and behold, 100% of these 20 random cases were medically diagnosable with reactive hypoglycemia. And when a year later we pulled 204 charts, 98% of them were medically diagnosable. This has huge relevance on relapse. So what are some of the common symptoms of low blood sugar? Well, when it's been seriously studied, 94% of people report nervousness and anxiety, 89% report irritability, 87% report exhaustion, and down we go. So what's very interesting about this is that some of the symptoms of reactive hypoglycemia are actually the same as post-acute withdrawal. Let's look at this a little more closely. Irritability comes from adrenaline. Depression comes from low blood sugar. Aggressiveness comes from adrenaline. Insomnia comes from adrenaline. Fatigue can come from both low blood sugar and when adrenaline wears off. Restlessness, adrenaline. Nervousness, anxiety, adrenaline. Desire to drink or use, both adrenaline and low blood sugar. And clinical experience indicates that most people reporting a craving or slip also report missing 1 or 2 meals prior. So our thesis is that missing a meal or eating a very high carbohydrate meal low in protein, sugar, donuts, etc., or going too long without food puts people directly into a high-risk situation for relapse. And there are several interconnected reasons for this. So let's start by looking at the functions of the prefrontal cortex. As you all know, the prefrontal cortex is responsible for executive functioning, planning, prioritizing, willpower, making choices, thinking through consequences, and accessing and using relaxation and other recovery skills. So if you look at these SPECT scans, the top of the brain here is where the prefrontal cortex is. The normal brain, you can see it's well functioning. However, the brain with attention deficit disorder, which is another cause of relapse in susceptible people, has great big holes in functioning right where the prefrontal cortex is. And even Ritalin doesn't help enough. So what does this mean? Well, first of all, we have found that the stress response impairs prefrontal cortex functioning. So low or dropping blood sugar stimulates a release of adrenaline, which has the effect of activating the reptilian brain, the amygdala and brainstem, but it deactivates the prefrontal cortex through change in signaling pathways. My language for this is that it puts the prefrontal cortex offline. Therefore, adrenaline makes us more reactive and impulsive and interferes with long-range planning. So people have less access to executive functioning while affected by adrenaline. And we posit that therefore, and we've seen this in action over and over and over again, they have less access to their recovery skills, because accessing and using recovery skills requires executive functioning. Haven't you had relapsing clients say to you, I don't know how I got to the parking lot of the liquor store, or I don't remember calling my dealer. It just somehow happened. Well, how come you didn't call your sponsor? How come you didn't go for a walk? How come you didn't ... right? Use any of your recovery skills. I forgot. It didn't occur to me. Oh, well, how long has it been, or had it been, since you'd eaten protein? Oh, well, let's see. This was at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I had a bag of potato chips for lunch and a cup of coffee. Okay, well, what did you have for breakfast? Oh, I didn't have any breakfast. So you mean to tell me then that you hadn't had any protein since dinner the night before your craving and slip? Oh, well, I guess you're right. We have found this story repeated over and over and over again. So research also indicates that a well-functioning prefrontal cortex is crucial to sobriety by studying willpower. So for willpower to operate adequately, the PFC needs an adequate supply of glucose. So relatively low or extremely low blood sugar reflects in lower glucose supply to the prefrontal cortex, thus less willpower. Willpower is actually biochemically mediated. If the prefrontal cortex is well fed, we have access to better willpower. If it's starving, our willpower goes out the window. Now, low and dropping blood sugar, as we saw before, results in a surge of adrenaline and other stress hormones, which puts the prefrontal cortex offline, leading to a lack of use of recovery and relapse prevention skills in response to a relapse trigger. But there's also a third thing going on, and that is adrenaline destabilizes us. It can make us anxious, agitated, angry, reactive. And once we're used to using either a substance or a behavior to calm ourselves down or to mediate our mood, a conditioned response is created in the brain, similar to Pavlov's dogs who would start salivating outside of their control when they would hear a bell rung that they were used to hearing when they were given food. Same process. Our brain becomes conditioned to reach for, to crave, to want a mood-altering substance or behavior when we become dysregulated. So a hypoglycemic-induced stress response may, all by itself, stimulate a conditioned response towards the use of addictive substances and behaviors. So what do we do about this? Well, we recommend that our clients eat protein, at least 15 to 20 grams of protein, along with healthy carbohydrates, complex carbs, such as what's found in vegetables, fruits, and whole grains, if you can tolerate them, every 3 to 4 hours. Now, once your adrenals are healthy and you're in solid recovery, intermittent fasting may be useful, but we have found intermittent fasting actually to be very dangerous. in early recovery. We want to avoid simple sugars and starches. We want to include fiber and healthy fats because these slow down the absorption of sugar into our bloodstream. Now, it's very interesting, and you may have found this in your own life or with your clients, that premenstrual women have more reactive blood sugar and need to eat more frequently in order to manage both PMS and cravings. Research indicates that PMS is a very high-risk time for relapse in women, and it's also a high-risk time for being arrested in women. And I'm going to be sharing some stories about this later on. So the treatment implications are as follows. We suggest that clinicians do the following to support our clients in developing these recovery and relapse prevention skills. Every time a client reports a craving or a slip or relapse, the clinician should ask the client, whether it be individually or in a group, when was the last time they ate protein or sugar, to determine if it had been more than 3 to 4 hours and the likelihood of dropping blood sugar. You might want to review with the client a 3-day food diary to identify the relationship between inconsistent food intake, mood dysregulation, cravings, and relapse. And we've actually designed a daily questionnaire to help your clients track these relationships and also to help staff in a residential program to track these relationships as well. So finally, what we do is help clients develop the self-care skill. Okay, this is about self-care, and that's a therapeutic issue, of feeding themselves a protein-rich meal every 4 hours. We recommend 15 to 20 grams of protein per meal or snack. And just for orientation, a piece of meat or fish the size of your palm is around 20 grams of protein. This skill will require constant reinforcement at first, because changing people's relationship with food and people's eating habits requires time and patience. Most people resist this at first. Now, I am not talking about people with eating disorders. I am talking about your ordinary client, the ordinary person on the street. So many of us do not pay attention to how we're feeding ourselves. And this can lead to all sorts of issues. And again, we have lots of references, and there's been lots of research done on this. So that's discovery number 1. And it leads directly to my discovery number 2, how to stop cravings and relapse long term. And we do this by feeding the brain. Now, this doesn't mean that we ignore the other 2 legs of the stool either. We still have to be attending to the psychological issues, trauma, shame, social issues, spiritual issues. But what we found is that once the brain is online, the client is able to much more effectively engage in treatment and the recovery process. So, feed the brain by eating protein every 3 to 4 hours. Use targeted amino acids to address each depleted neurotransmitter system effectively. And I teach you how to do this in my courses. This has been shown to lead to 85% long-term sobriety in the studies that have been done in treatment programs that utilize this approach. Now, I have a story here about a woman in her 4th treatment program. And by her 4th treatment program, she was committed to sobriety. She was going to 3 meetings a day by bus because she lost her license, having gotten several DUIs. And she was in despair because no matter how motivated she was, no matter how many meetings she went to, no matter how hard she tried to use her recovery skills, she kept relapsing. So I met her in her 4th treatment program, which was a 10-day outpatient IV amino acid detox program where we were using amino acids intravenously to very quickly build neurotransmitters. And in my first meeting with her, I shared with her all this information about reactive hypoglycemia. And as I talked about blood sugar, she started to cry. And she said, "Oh, that explains it." I said, "Explains what?" And she told me a heartbreaking story. She said that she had gone to a Wayne Dwyer, one of those really exciting, encouraging, uplifting, inspiring lectures. And in the middle of it, she had been uplifted and inspired, and in fact had a spiritual awakening where she recommitted with everything in her to sobriety. And she was drunk within 2 hours of leaving the lecture. She hated herself. And she realized she couldn't ever trust herself again, because if you have a spiritual awakening and it can't last more than 2 hours, what use is it? And then I asked her to go through her day with me. I said, "Well, what did you have for breakfast?" And she said, "Well, I don't always have breakfast, but I think I had eggs that day and a cup of coffee with sugar." I said, "Okay. Well, anything else with breakfast?" No. "Well, what about lunch?" "Oh, I usually skip lunch. I'm not very hungry and I'm too busy and I don't think about it." I said, "Okay, well, what about a mid-afternoon snack?" "No, I might have had a bag of potato chips, but I don't think so that day." "Dinner?" "Well, you see, I was running late at work and my husband picked me up late and we ran off to the seminar and we were planning on having dinner afterwards." So as she was telling me this story, everything was falling into place for her. And she said, "That's why I drank, right?" I said, "Yeah, that's why you drank." And she said, "Well, you know, I've never taken food seriously. And nobody in any of my recovery programs ever told me to. I didn't think it mattered." And I said, "It matters." From that moment on, she started eating protein really consistently every 4 hours. And that, on top of replenishing her neurotransmitters with first the IV and then oral amino acids, 5 years later, she hasn't had one slip. So discovery number 3, how to support your clients in-home detox safely. So we now know that withdrawal symptoms are due to depleted neurotransmitters and other nutrients, because the brain actually requires enough neurotransmitters, okay, in order to function. But by the time most people get into recovery or early sobriety, their store of neurotransmitters is profoundly depleted. Not enough for people's brain and bodies to function, so they have withdrawal symptoms. Therefore, we want to start rebuilding the nutrient and neurotransmitter stores using food and amino acid and nutrient therapy before the detox starts. We want people getting used to the 5-star pro-recovery diet a week ahead of time. We use specific nutrients and amino acids to address depletion symptoms once detox starts, and we make sure that they're all on hand. Because once we know what drug they are trying to detox off, then we know exactly what nutrients and amino acids to have on hand. We support detoxification pathways in the body using sauna and Epsom salt baths. A colleague of mine working in a residential program that helps people off prescription and non-prescription drugs called Alternative to Meds tells me that she has found that people coming off both SSRI medications as well as benzodiazepines do so much better when they use sauna and Epsom salt baths to more quickly detox. You, of course, watch vitals to avoid crisis and bring in nutrient or medication support as needed. And if somebody is at high seizure risk, then just for safety's sake, we want them to do this in the hospital or an IV amino acid detox program where they have staff on hand. But if a person is not at seizure risk, then this can work beautifully. And so I'd like you to hear from a student of mine.
She called me after 48 hours and said she was done with it. The client was 43 years old, a mother. She'd had numerous police call outs to her house over concerns for her welfare and the welfare of her children. She was drinking 6.5 litres of wine per day. On the Friday afternoon, in the emergency child protection case conference, the chair said that this mother was not under any circumstances to have her child back in anything less than 12 months on this occasion. So at 2:30 on the Sunday afternoon, I arrive to help her to commence her at-home reduction and HRC detox. Hi, my name is Mark Stiles and I'm a Live Life Beyond addiction recovery facilitator here in the UK. So there I am, 2:30 Sunday afternoon at this lady's house with a husband there. They'd done all the preparation that I asked for, so they'd cleared the cupboards with all of the sugar food poisons and the carbs, even read every single label, made sure that even aspartame and other sweeteners were gone, cleared a space on the kitchen side, on the work surface. So we were there. We laid out all of her supplements and amino acids and nutrients. We laid out the chart which told her what to take, when to take it, how to take it, etc. Little tick chart so that she knew, so that she could just check off and make sure she'd taken everything. She'd had her menus for the next 7 days, all that we'd already got planned out. So the menus were there, the food shopping list was there, ready for the husband. Everything was sorted. She was ready to go. She decided that she was going to reduce her alcohol intake by 1 large glass of wine per day. So she was going to have 6 litres less 1 large glass today. The next day on the Monday it was 6 litres less 2 large glasses, etc. So we'd got it all set up that I was going to call her just regularly, 3 calls a day, just to make sure that she was okay. We were geared up to do the CEWA alcohol withdrawal scale if that was necessary. And that was it. She was off. 2:30, first supplements, away she went, and I went home. Carried on putting in the calls, and then at 2:30, just 48 hours later, so on the Tuesday, I answered the phone and she said, "That's it, I'm done, I'm finished." Wow, thinking that she'd decided to, abandon the reduction and the detox, as she'd done on so many previous occasions in her life. And I said, "Oh, well, actually, what kind of led you to that decision?" And she said, No, you don't understand. You've got it wrong. She said, "I'm finished with alcohol. I am done with alcohol. Finished. It's over. Don't want it." And today, 5 years later, she's still alcohol free. She got her child returned to her, actually within 3 months of that case conference. Career-wise, she's earning 4 times as much now as she was back then. Life is absolutely fantastic. So I wanted to share this story because the power of that life transition is just amazing. For sure, not everybody gets it and does it in 48 hours, but imagine the power of that. So I just wanted to share that with you. I would urge any professional, whether you're trying to help a client, a patient, or you are yourself a family member, or you're trying to help a family member to get stopped from alcohol and to stay stopped, I absolutely urge you, find out about amino acid therapy in the role of alcohol, drug, and process addiction treatment. I use it every day of my life in my working practice, and I am completely blessed to be working with so many people, so many more people who get great transitions than those who don't. Good luck.
So that was Mark's story, and I hear so many of these stories from so many of my other students. So discovery number 4, give your clients hope by decreasing distressing symptoms quickly. This engages them into treatment long-term, and all the previous tools we've talked about quickly decrease all the symptoms of post-acute withdrawal, including depression, anxiety, insomnia, irritability, but most importantly of all, despair. This gives people hope. Clients are better able to engage in recovery and make lasting change. And sometimes they are forever grateful. So I had a gentleman walk into my office 3 o'clock one afternoon, rip-roaring drunk. He was weaving, he was slurring his words, he was incoherent. You could smell the booze on him. And he was only there because his wife threatened divorce if he didn't stop drinking. He had been trying to stop drinking for the previous 5 years, and nothing had ever worked. So I tried to get a story from him about what had happened, and I finally got that he'd had breakfast that morning, got to work, it was a decent breakfast, went to work, and his boss pulled him aside and told him that if he didn't stop drinking, he was going to be fired. So he left work, went to the bar, got drunk, started drinking shots, drank through lunch, no food, kept drinking. I do not know how he got to my office, and I did not allow him to drive home. Somehow he remembered in his alcohol-fogged brain that he was supposed to show up at my office at 3 o'clock or his wife was going to leave. So he made it. And he made it carrying his bag of supplements that he used to take because he used to be a bodybuilder. And I had him pour them all out on the floor of my office, and among them was a tub of L-glutamine powder. Well, bodybuilders use glutamine to pump up muscle. We use it to support a starving prefrontal cortex. So I asked him if it was okay that we use some glutamine, and I put a teaspoon, which is actually quite a lot, in a little bit of water and asked him to drink it. Within 10 minutes, he, still reeking of alcohol, was clear, coherent, not shaking, not slurring, and not weaving. All of those symptoms had been due to dramatically low blood sugar, because contrary to popular opinion, alcohol doesn't raise blood sugar levels, it actually drops it. He had not eaten since breakfast. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He'd been drinking shots. His blood sugar was dangerously low, and the glutamine got him functioning again. Well, he was so impressed by his sort of miraculous recovery that he came back the next week. And the next week he was sober. And I was able to get a real history from him. Now, one of the reasons he was sober is that he'd been taking all the amino acids that I had suggested to him for the week with other nutrients, and he'd been eating protein every 4 days, every 4 hours. But he was still craving. He'd still been white knuckling it. He'd been going to meetings, but they had never really worked for him to get over this initial hump. But he was determined, and so he came into the next session sober, and we started digging into what was really going on. Well, he mentioned that his sister had celiac disease and was gluten-free. So I asked him if he'd ever been gluten-free before, and he shared that he had for a whole year, and that turned out to be the year that he had managed to stay alcohol-free, because he had actually managed to stay alcohol-free for 1 year, and it had coincided with the year he was also gluten-free. And when he started eating gluten again, it turns out that that was when he started drinking again. Well, there is a small group of people with alcohol use disorder who are gluten intolerant and cannot stay sober if they're eating gluten. And this gentleman fit into that category. So we immediately pulled gluten out of his diet, and his cravings went away. And the only time his cravings came back was when he'd gone on a backpacking trip with a friend who was responsible for the food. He'd run out of his protein snacks. The friend had just brought sandwiches and donuts and things like that, so that by the time they got back to town and walked past a bar, the bar started calling his name. His craving went from 0 to 10 immediately. But by then he had enough sobriety, enough recovery skills that he realized what was going on, was able to walk past the bar and get himself real food. And from then on, he was able to stay in recovery. So what about your clients? Please take a look at your list of clients now, the ones that you wrote down, and how many of their symptoms or stories did you recognize? Which of these tools do you think might promote more positive outcomes in them? Can you imagine, maybe take a moment, and imagine the difference that some of my discoveries might make to your clients, or maybe to your practice, or maybe to your own personal well-being and the well-being of your family members. Is there anything else? Is there anything about what I've shared today that you would like to learn more about or take a deep dive into? Well, this is what I'd like to share with you now. So my offer is for you to be able to get all of these tools to stop cravings and relapse, to save and change lives, the lives of both your current and your new clients, and possibly even yourself and your family members, with my personal promise. Okay? My promise is that once you have taken the full Level 1 course certification training, you will become an expert at reducing cravings and withdrawal symptoms within 20 minutes, most of the time, recognizing and eliminating the post-acute withdrawal symptoms of aggressiveness, irritability, depression, anxiety, and cravings, most of the time, and empower your clients to reduce relapse by up to 85%. This is change that perhaps you never thought was possible, because I never thought it was possible until I made these discoveries too. And my student Mark, whom you just met, couldn't believe the changes in his practice once he started utilizing these skills. I've had so much experience with this, and therefore, I believe in it so strongly that I'm even going to offer you a full money-back guarantee, okay? My guarantee is that after 1 year of starting and completing your level 1 core certification training, that if you haven't discovered new ways that have improved your clients' outcomes or your own personal health and well-being or your family's health and well-being, I will give you all your money back. This is because I know you're going to make life-changing discoveries all on your own. So, my level 1 core training is 10 lessons over 5 months. It meets every other week online. I keep things simple, easy learning, a lot of supportive mentoring. No previous academic qualifications are needed. I teach to the middle. And what that means is that I've had psychiatrists in my program and other doctors, and so I have reading material to give them all the biochemical information they want. But I'm also available to answer very simple questions. No questions are too basic for me, and I give you all the support and mentoring you need to feel comfortable with this material. Now, we are going to be raising prices. We've kept our prices stable for the past 5 years, and we are going to be raising them in 2021. So this is your last chance to get these prices. But most of all, I want to invite you to join a global community of skilled amino acid therapy and nutrient therapy, addiction and mental health life changers. We want you to join us and work to change the face of addiction treatment and recovery around the globe. So what will you actually become an expert in if you jump in and join us? Well, the level 1 core training teaches you how to use amino acids, specific crucial vitamin and mineral cofactors, and what we call the 5-star pro-recovery diet to address symptoms of neurotransmitter depletion and post-acute withdrawal, including, as we've mentioned, depression, anxiety, insomnia, etc. All of these are critical to brain function, changing your clients' outcomes, and even supporting your own well-being. You will have hands-on opportunity to work with your own clients and to get feedback not only from me, but also other students who have their own levels of expertise. You'll be building some very important skills. You will be able to utilize the amino acid therapy chart that was originally developed by Julia Ross to create effective dosing programs and protocols to support clients in their efforts towards mental health, emotional well-being, and recovery from substance use disorders. This is really a brilliant assessment tool that Julia created that we all use to accurately dose amino acids. And you'll be able to help your clients identify deficits in their current diets and create healthy meal plans tailored to their own lifestyles, their own cooking abilities, and their own nutritional needs. Again, without you having to become a nutritional wizard. Now, I'm offering you 3 personalized training options to both build on what you've learned today and implement it into your personal life and/or your professional and practice life. The first is just our basic 5-month level 1 core training, where we go over amino acid and nutrient therapy and the 5-star pro-recovery diet. This is $1,500. You can pay all at once, or an initial payment of only $300, and then you pay monthly. The people who go for this option are family members, people working on their own recovery, or people without their own practice yet who've just started in the field. The second option includes the certification. So you'll become an expert in amino acid and nutrient therapy and the 5-star pro recovery diet, and you will have a chance to practice these skills in our 4-month internship required for the certification. So for this, you will be working on 3 cases of your own during the core training, and then 4 more cases during the internship. So you have to have access to clients who are willing to stick with you through this process. This is $1,900 with, again, initial payment of only $300. But for those of you who aren't ready yet to jump in to the full training, who maybe just want to get your toes wet, we're offering a $575 course for 5 weeks, which we're calling Mental Health Nutrition for Therapists Foundations. And this is taught by one of the graduates of my program, who's a licensed psychotherapist and a nutritionist, and passionate about sharing this information with therapists just like her who want a little more. And so this introductory course will open your eyes to the impact that diet and gut health make on emotional and behavioral well-being. So you can either jump in and start swimming and become an expert, or you can learn a little more and still be helping your clients and yourself with this amazing information. So your next steps are to join our last cohort of students for 2020 by clicking the yes button. I want to be able to do this for my clients and myself. And pay your deposit or full investment to guarantee the 2020 pricing. To answer any of your remaining questions, submit an application and book an exploration call. And I want to invite you all also to read some of the articles on the website, to go on to YouTube, to listen to other lectures, other presentations by students, and learn more for free. This is truly a different way to really save and change lives. It's backed by over 4 decades of research and implementation outcomes. And, quote by a student of mine, you will be taught, coached, mentored, encouraged, and supported by the gentle kindness, phenomenal knowledge, and genuine love and concern for every human being that they say I have. Well, I certainly hope that that is what I am, how I'm coming across, because I really do want to offer you my personal support and my personal care and everything I have to get you to the next level of expertise. My team and I have your back. And with a money-back guarantee on your full investment, do you really have anything to lose to take the next step? We suspect that this will be the best cup of Starbucks a day investment you will ever make for your clients, your practice, and your own personal benefit. Please join us today.